Michael, Kat, it's a joy to see you, Kat. It's good to see you, Michael, too. 5 years on of Resourcing Church Partnership. Bit of introduction, Michael.
Well, we were designated as a Resource Church Partnership 7 years ago by the Bishop of Leicester. And from that, we decided very quickly that we wanted to engage with the vision of planting churches that plant churches to reach the 93% of those who don't yet know Jesus Christ. And so from 7 years ago until 5 years ago, we put a lot of planning into our first church plant, which was, as we know, was St Barnabas in Grange Park, which is really an obvious area to plant into because it's a new housing development with no centre of community. So we wanted to somehow bring church into the community and for St Barnabas to be a church of the community and for the community.
Fantastic. And Kat, where were you 7 years ago? I know 5 years on, but 7 years ago was when it all began. Where were you?
7 years ago, I was, we'd only just really moved to Loughborough, so started worshipping here at Emmanuel as a family. But I was in the beginning of exploring and looking at whether God was calling me to ordination. So I was sort of on the edge of these conversations because I was kind of getting involved in some of the things that were going on at church. But it wasn't until I started my ordination training just before the first church plant in St Barnabas that I kind of really then became a part of the team.
And at the time, I was curate here under the great leadership of Michael. And I guess Helen and I came with a real heart for future church planting, whatever that might look like. And so really it was quite exciting in 2017, the second year we were here, that those conversations with Sue Willits at the Good Shepherd and yourself, and even the diocese started to come about. There's a real sort of excitement about the possibility of church planting. So that's where it all began, with the heart for discipleship, heart for God's kingdom, heart for seeing people come to faith in new areas. So when it came, Michael, to sending the team, so we spent a bit of time praying and working out what that looks like and gathering the team together. When Emmanuel sent the first church planting team, what was that like? How did it feel? What was it like here after that point?
Well, prior to the point, I think it was actually quite exciting. And it was quite a lot of energy went into creating the team. We identified the team, particularly encouraged those who lived on the Grange Park estate to consider planting in to St Barnabas. So, and the gathering and the preparing and the sending, which obviously was down to you, was actually quite an exciting time. And I think, but it actually wasn't until we had the first Sunday when you'd all gone that we realised the impact of church planting that was going to be on Emmanuel Church. And so we had, the people that went to St Barnabas were great people, but they consisted quite a bit of our worship team, as well as our children and youth volunteers and leaders as well. And so the impact on actual the team, those that deliver ministry Sunday by Sunday, was really significant. But I think the biggest thing that hit us was just over there, was where the families used to sit. And then the first Sunday that the families had gone to St Barnabas, it was almost empty. And then you realise then the gap between what we'd done, and which felt quite normal in some respects. Some people call it sacrificial in other respects. But what we'd actually done, and as an anticipation, but then the reality really hit, I would say, on that first Sunday of it must have been about the 20th of September or something like that. Yeah.
And Kat, for
yeah,
you?
and I think for us at that time, we were one of the families that worshipped here, and we really noticed that first Sunday that all the people, or not all the people, but some of the people that we'd sat with and that our kids had run around with, then they weren't there, and I think that's the moment where you notice the cost of sending people to go and start something new. And I think we've learned things from that, and we've gained wisdom from that in terms of what churches need to do to be prepared for that moment when the people have moved and have gone and have been sent with such joy and thanksgiving. It was a great sort of sense of momentum and anticipation of this is amazing. God's doing something really new through what you and the team were going to be doing at St Barnabas. But actually, then we realised I think there needed to be some thinking about then what happens that moment that you've gone.
So there's a sense of learning from it.
Yeah,
And
I think so.
Do you think, we'll talk about SDB, but our sort of emotions when we went as well. But do you think the church here was prepared for that? Or were you, Michael, were you prepared for that sense of loss? Was it there in your mind?
I think it's a bit like when your first child is born. Is that there's a lot of anticipation, but you don't know the reality of what it means to be a parent until the child is actually born. And so I think we've done some preparation and some thinking through what it might mean, but it was actually when it actually happened that the true realization hit home, I think. So I think in some respects you can plan and think, but in other respects I don't think you can, because you don't know quite how it's going to feel when it happens. And there's nothing prepares you for the actual act of church planting. So I think some and some, I would argue, that yes, we did plan, but actually when it came to it, it's like, oh, this is what it really means.
Yeah.
It dawned, the reality dawned, I think, for me and for those that were called here to build Emmanuel back up again.
Yeah. I think for the 2 years, so from 2017 to actually planting on the 15th September 2019, there was a sense of preparing the team that were going to be sent as well. So there was a year of all this with the diocese of bidding various other things about what it could look like, and our theological underpinning as well, which is really, really at the heart of why we were doing what we were doing. And gathering the team over the course of a year at our house, at the curate's house, but also on the estate to pray and prayer walk. I think that was really valuable. As someone that likes getting stuff going quite quickly, it was a bit of, it felt like a long time, but actually in hindsight that was really important for the sending team to get a sense of why we're doing this. We're not just doing this because we want to be a part of something new. It is really to reach people on that estate with the good news of Jesus Christ and see people come to faith. And we'll move to 5 years on, but 5 years on, I think we're just starting to see that, really. We've got baptisms coming up for our 5th anniversary, and it's people who have recently come to faith. They haven't moved church, they've come for the first time, and that's been really exciting. So for us, the preparation was really important in hindsight, realizing that praying and being together and worshiping together was important. And then the day that we were commissioned from here, and the following Sunday we met, there wasn't a building, the building wasn't ready yet, so we met in our kitchen. It was about 23 or so, 26 in our kitchen, 10 of which were kids. And I guess for us as a sending team, there was a sense of excitement of what is it going to look like? And if we were honest, we probably didn't have a clue what it looked like. You can prepare for stuff, but you just didn't know. We didn't know that we weren't going to be in the building, but we wanted to get going. The second Sunday, we were up on the hills on Beacon Hill praying for the estate from there, because again, we didn't have a building. I think 7 Sundays in a row we were meeting the local secondary school. So it was a sort of a nomadic lifestyle to begin with. And then we were eventually, in December, we were in the art community hub, right at the heart of the community. So yeah, so there was a sense of excitement, but also I think as the sending team, I guess you were saying there is a sense of loss as well. And for us, the loss was being a part of a large church. And when you've got a few people doing kids group, but it's all ages from 0 to the teenagers, you realise the sort of the resources and the people and the history of the church that Emmanuel have for many, many years that have been built up. And so, yeah, so there was a sense of loss in missing friends and missing the sort of the amazing work and ministry of Emmanuel, but also excitement as well. So there's those two little things, and I know talking to some of our guys now, you know, some of them move with young people, and there wasn't any youth work either. And it's that sort of, there's the loss on both sides, I think. There's the excitement, but also the loss and the reality of planting something new from scratch, where you haven't got everything sorted. But yeah, it's been good. So then COVID hit, which was obviously part of our plan. And so a lot of people in the resourcing church planting sort of network talk about sort of the rebuild of the sending church. But obviously it's a lot slower than people often make it out to be. Michael, how was that sort of, obviously COVID hit all of us and impacted all of us in different ways, whether it's planting church, the sending church. What was that time span of recovering, but also growing again?
I think that there were, in a sense, several stages of grief that happened as we planted a church. The first obviously happened in September 2019, and we're just trying to find our feet again. Of course, COVID hit and lockdown happened, and the church buildings were closed. So in some ways, it was for many months, for weeks and months. It was just really maintaining what was going on in Emmanuel and trying to keep the show on the road, obviously generally by Zoom. And so you can't really rebuild in that time. All you do is trying to hold everything really, as it just really keep on going. So I think that we did look at how we recover from COVID, how we respond to it. There were certain things we took on. There's certain things that we set down, let go of. But I don't think COVID was the time to rebuild. I think it was maybe after COVID that it began to happen. So COVID was the huge disruptor, as well as church planting as well. So that I think that was. And I can't remember it in huge detail, but I think it just felt a really, really hard time. But I think it was more for me here. It's much more just trying to hold Emmanuel, as opposed to rebuild the place to make sure that everyone just didn't disappear and never ever come back again. So that is my. When I look back on COVID, that I think was my overriding impression, my overriding feelings on that.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we did during that period of COVID here was to, like you said, Michael, to focus on kind of 3 areas: responding to what was going on by putting things online, by the different ways of contacting people and staying in touch with people, that looking to have some sort of space for recovery for people to process and deal with what was going on. But then also we did then, as time went on, begin to kind of get together a dedicated group of people to look at what do we do to rebuild. And I think at the time, a lot of that was focused on how do we rebuild from what's happened over COVID. I'm not sure that we were completely aware of the impact that St Barnabas people going had on Emmanuel at that point, because COVID sort of overshadowed everything. You say it's the great disruptor, and I think it really was. And I think it was only then, after another period of time, that we were able to then look right back to September 2019 and say, that's something we need to rebuild from too, the people moving to St Barnabas. So then, that's become more about looking at the whole bigger picture. How do we rebuild from COVID, but also from people leaving? And what does that look like now? And this goes back to what we were talking about in terms of some of the learning that came from what it felt like to have 25 people, go and create something new. So how do we have leaders being developed and grown and encouraged into different roles? How do we still continue to reach out and draw more people to the things that go on here? How do we continue to sort of reach people with the good news of Jesus from here? So there was that kind of process of that double hit from COVID and St Barnabas.
Yeah. I mean, COVID hit us all in different ways, and it was really hard. And I think for us, it was sort of like, we felt like we'd just got this thing up and running. We'd just been commissioned here to be sent. We'd also just been commissioned by the Bishop of Leicester at that sort of party event at the Ark Community Hub. And we just started seeing people coming along. Even on our first Sunday at the school, we had a family that turned up that were from the local area, went to another church, but always wanted to be part of a local church. And they joined us, and a few other people started joining us. And that sense of, okay, right, we've got some momentum. And then Mothering Sunday.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
2020.
Yeah, it was.
20th of March, something like that.
And then it was all, right, we've got to
That's it.
shut the doors. But I guess I think, again, looking back, the slight hindsight when we did come back, obviously we all went online, we all tried different things of trying to connect and trying to encourage people in their discipleship and mission. But when we came back, I think because we'd only just got going, and because we were a sort of pioneering, planting kind of culture anyway, it was just another relaunch for us. I guess we didn't have the sort of years of history with us, and the people that have been part of our church, and age demographic, we were quite a lot younger. So I guess it sort of, we had a slight advantage in terms of when we came back. It was just another, here we go again, we're starting again. And it has taken a while to get back into what does it mean to be church again and meeting together. But we've seen the church grow from 23 to just over 100 people part of our church, and trying to reach in different ways as we all do. Sort of the sort of standard things of parish church. Really, I think there's nothing new, and we're not inventing anything new, but they're just the heart to reach people with the gospel, which is really important post-COVID. And so return lockdown, the relaunch, the rebuild, the sort of recover. So here at Emmanuel, and Kat, you sort of starting your sort of curacy here.
Yeah.
How did you start sort of, again, once the recovery was over, start getting the agenda of resourcing church and planting back onto the sort of minds of those that are coming? Especially as I guess we had new people that weren't there when we sent St Barnabas. How's that been?
Well, we relaunched our vision about 2 or 3 years ago now, based on the who, the what, the how, and the why. And at the heart of that was Jesus Christ growing disciples and church planting, and how we do that. So that's how we try to galvanise the congregation once again, just by having that focus. We've preached through that. We probably need to relaunch that, re-preach it, I would argue. But I think that was the key thing that we did, is that we got a vision statement on one piece of paper, but of which church planting was the heart of it. So we grow disciples in order to plant out again. That was the thinking behind it, the guidance behind it, if you can call it that. So I think we tried to put it back on the agenda as soon as we possibly could. And in a sense, I mean, obviously COVID was the great disruptor, but at the same time also it was something which it gave you time to sit back and think and reflect, and maybe to relaunch, do things slightly differently. But also I think what we were determined not to do was to let the church planting agenda just slip away. And I think, of course, as we do resource church weekends. Is that the third or fourth one we're going to do in the not too distant?
Yeah.
Whatever that might be.
Third, I think.
Third.
Maybe fourth.
And so therefore it's not just putting it on our agenda, which is important to do, but also putting it on the Good Shepherd's agenda and keep it on St Barnabas' agenda as well. And it's not just the individual churches, it's the churches coming together to do something. So again, I think that's a really significant part of what we do, is gather together once a year and just have the three churches engaging with one another and hopefully encouraging and inspiring us in our call. And I think it is a call, a deep call, and to plant churches that plant churches.
And I think it's something in our conversations, we try and meet monthly to pray and meet as a resourcing church partnership. But I think one of my reflections over the past sort of 5 years is how much have we actually preached at STB about future planting as well. I think that's one of the things that we're coming to as a leadership team. Actually, we've got to get that on the agenda even more now, because the majority of those at STB have had no historic connection or a relational sort of capital with Emmanuel, because they're brand new. And so it's recognising that we're part of something bigger. We're not on islands. Any of our churches aren't on island. We're part of the diocese, part of the Church of England, but as a resourcing church partnership, to say actually, yes, we've got our vision statement as STB, which is encountering Jesus, building community, seeing transformation. But there's a little sentence at the end that says, and to plant again, and to plant in partnership. And what does that mean to plant in partnership? So we're 5 years in. We're just starting to sort of revamp that to get it into the mindset of, yes, it's great what God has built here, and it feels, sometimes I feel like as leaders, are we getting too cozy here? Is it becoming this sort of, and the church know that, I've been saying that a number of times, we can get so cozy that we like this.
Yeah.
But what does it mean, the cost of sending and being part of something bigger and seeing the areas? And so obviously last year, going into our church planting sort of strategies and plans at the beginning, some of that sort of drifted a little bit, and then some of it came back into a bit real sharp focus. Last year, something significant happened at the Resourcing Church weekend. Yeah. And Kat, you were part of that.
Yeah, and so it's really interesting that actually it's through talking about it, it's through preaching about it, it's through people hearing about other people who've done church planting or other types of church plants or new worshipping communities that have happened, in other churches or across the country, that actually then it empowers the whole of the congregations to think we're a part of this. This is not just a leadership thing. And so you're right, Ben. The church weekend last year, we had the two main speakers were John McGinley and Bishop Sarju, the Bishop of Loughborough, and they both talked about being rooted in a local church community and building worshiping community where you live. And as a result of that, there were 3 families who worshipped here at Emmanuel who were talking to each other. And again, a great opportunity at the church weekend that there is that time over meal times and coffee breaks and, as you're waiting between things, during the sessions as well, there's opportunity to talk about this stuff, to think things through together, to get excited about things. Well, these 3 families had been chatting away and saying, I think maybe we ought to think about being rooted in our local church community, which for 2 of them was the Good Shepherd. And we'd been running our family service at the Good Shepherd once a fortnight for about 6 to 8 months, I think, in its kind of new format. It has been running a lot longer than that. And some of the families here at Emmanuel had been a part of helping to grow that. And so they were talking to each other and saying, I think we could be thinking here that God is calling us to move to the Good Shepherd, to be part of the worshipping community of the Church of the Good Shepherd. So they approached Michael and said, this is what we're thinking. Michael, I think it's fair to say your initial reaction was, more people are going to leave.
Oh dear.
Because it's important to recognise that, because we know that it's a cost, but it's you've got to keep that momentum, and you've got to keep that bravery to be open to doing that, because otherwise, I think you could easily say, no, we can't send 3 families from here to there, because they're really integral to the ministry here at Emmanuel, to the services, to the discipleship groups, to the kids and youth work, and all the other things that people do. What happened was in February this year, 2024, 3 families moved, and again were commissioned. We prayed for them here. And they moved to be part of the worshipping community at the Good Shepherd, meaning both the morning community worship service and the family service fortnightly, as well as being part of things like the PCC and discipleship group and prayer groups and things like that. And again, the impact of that has been felt here at Emmanuel. I think, I don't know, Michael, if you want to say about that.
Well, it's just more loss, isn't it? As you've indicated, more loss of people who are very gifted people, very talented people, who contributed to the life of the church, generally in the young people's work. Yeah. And so again, we have to, once again, not only have we lost some young people, we've also lost some great leaders. And so, of course, we now have to build up here once again. And we're in that process now. Yeah. I would say we're just beginning to think about, well, not beginning to think about it, we're in the midst of it now. But it's at a very early, very initial stage, I would argue. And the
Good Shepherd, we've gained, there were a few children that came anyway, and that was amazing. We get sort of 12 plus children every Sunday, and we've gained more people who can help with the children's youth work. They don't do it solely. There's the members of the original congregation also do it, but there's more people to kind of resource that, which also comes with challenges. It's interesting, you say about one kids group for all ages. That's what we have going on at the Good Shepherd at the moment. And there's a great challenge in doing that. How do you disciple 2-year-olds and 10-year-olds at the same time? But there's also a great joy in that being a kind of real family feel, and being supported and resourced by the whole congregation. The new congregation with people who've been there for many, many years, and people who live nearby and have now made that their home church.
Yeah, I think we prepared the ground for it over a couple of years, didn't we? So I mean, a couple of years ago, I became priest in charge of the Good Shepherd. So I gained more responsibility there. And
that was quite a strategic thing, I guess.
Yes, it was. Yes, obviously the previous incumbent left for another post, and I think that without me stepping in or someone stepping in, they wouldn't have had another vicar for quite a significant period of time. Definitely not a full-time vicar, maybe a part-time vicar. And so yes, there was an opportunity, for instance, to oversee a congregation, but also we'd also been working with Good Shepherd as part of the Resource Church team, Resource Church partnership. 2 members of the Good Shepherd had planted in St Barnabas, so had a good relationship anyway with the Good Shepherd, which was really great. But also it meant that also we had plans to planted the Beacon Academy School and other areas as well. So it gave us the sort of the entree, if you like, to begin to do that. However, I think what we also discovered was that we spent the first year or so just building relationships with the congregation and building trust within the congregation. The level of trust was reasonably high, I would say, for someone going in, because they knew me, I knew them a little, because of the Resource Church partnership, and Kat knew them a little bit as well. So, but it was actually just almost starting a new relationship, building trust, and actually saying to the congregation that we need to think about how we reach out into our local community. What's the strategy? What's the plan? And it's almost like, and then God, I think, was working through the church weekend to prompt the three families then to move across as well. So when they moved across, the ground wasn't fully prepared, because I don't think it ever can be, going back to the previous bit of the conversation. However, some ground had been prepared for it to happen. Yeah. I think, and to be fair, I think that the Good Shepherd congregation have been very open, very, very welcoming, very friendly, and also very gracious as well. So I do, in lots of ways, I do admire the congregation and the Good Shepherd. It's been great.
And the great thing about that is that there was flexibility within the plans, even though there was this sort of right, Beacon Academy is where we're going to go, but this was the sort of next step that the Spirit was leading us on. And looking back at some of that, I did the other day looked back at some of the papers when we put the bid in for becoming a resourcing church. The theological underpinning was sort of being led by the Spirit.
Yeah.
The fact that where are all the relationships already, where are they? Yeah. The third thing was the proclamation of the gospel, that we're actually going with the good news of Jesus. It's not just to do nice things, it's to share the gospel. And then the last one was team, and there's a team that's gone and it's made an impact. So I guess, Michael, would you do it again? Because is it worth the cost of being a resourcing church, the lead resourcing church, which Emmanuel is with the Good Shepherd and STB, and we're all ready looking at how can we plant together, what does that look like, and is it worth the cost?
I think it is worth the cost, and I think you've got to do it before you think you're ready to do it. Yeah. So yes, so I think if you do it when you're ready to do it, when you're ready to plant, I think you've missed the moment, quite frankly.
Or you would never do it.
Or you would never do it. Yeah, precisely. Yeah. So I do think it is worth the cost. It is, but it is. I don't want to labour the point but it is quite hard as well. Yeah. But I think also what we're now doing is actually saying, well, actually, where is the next area that we can plant into? And of course, with the Minster Community Project that is in almost full swing, we're saying actually, well, how can we draw other churches into that agenda? And obviously there are 2 or 3 areas where we could plant, but we might have to do it with not just the 3 of us, but also with the 3 churches, but also beyond that as well. Yeah. So I would definitely say that it's worth it, but I was also saying that you go in with your eyes open. And I think that in another context, I think other churches have planted, and immediately they replaced the 50 they sent out with another 50 that walked through the door. I don't think it's quite as easy or as simple as that. No. And I think it's in a completely different context to a large market town with a university attached to it. Yeah. So I think that it's not. I think you've got to. It's all contextual. You've got to look at your context and see. Well, actually, if I do plant, where is the growth going to come from? And ultimately, as we know, it is God who gives the growth. You need to pray that God will be faithful to that, and faithful to the fact that you have sent people out and have encouraged people to go. Yeah. But at the same time, I don't think there's a guarantee. So it's discerning then what the congregation looks like post a plant, if actually the people coming in, they're not ready for leadership, or in fact that the people coming in, it doesn't come in a flood. It's more like a dribble, if that's the right word. If that's
or trickle.
Or a trickle. A
dribble.
Dribble, trickle.
Yeah. It reminds me of someone in the summer sort of saying, God's often not in a rush. Yeah. And that sort of time to think it through, because it can be the entrepreneurial side of us goes, right, we've got to get going, There is an urgency of the gospel, I get that, but there's a sense of sometimes it's waiting for the right leader and the right people and the right place to come up at the right time.
I think a lot of it is standing firm and holding your nerve. Yeah. And also, if people do come in and they're not the right people, you need to have the wisdom to actually say now is not the right time for those people. So it's a question of discernment, I think, and that's tricky.
And I think there's something really key about the working to get together as a team. And so, if I think about when we moved over to the Good Shepherd in February, the people from here, my instinct was to say, no, we're not ready yet. Even though I know all of this stuff in my head about how you've got to step out before you feel ready. But actually, because we work as part of a team, and we gather together to pray, and we talk about these things, and the joys and the challenges of church planting and doing new things all the time, it meant that with encouragement and support from the wider team, we were able to then make it happen. Because I think if I'm really honest, if it was just down to me, I'd have probably said, no, we're not ready yet.
Yeah.
But because that's what happens when you're working on your own. But we don't work on our own. We work together, and we work really hard to keep those relationships and to keep sharing with each other what's going on, and recognizing whose strengths are needed at which point. And that's really key.
I'm sure there's much more we could talk about.
I mean, loads, yeah.
So we're 5 years on from planting the first one, obviously then the second one with the graft, the Good Shepherd. So, Kat, I'll go for you first. 5 years from now, I know it's a difficult question because you look back at stuff and go, actually, the plans are slightly different. But 5 years from now, what would your hopes be for the Resourcing Church Partnership and the ongoing planting and making disciples and
Yeah,
stuff?
I think I would say that my hope would be that in 5 years' time, people, whoever it is that's here at that point, is not looking at 10 years ago and saying, well, that was a cool thing that we did when we planted St Barnabas. or looking at this year and going, yeah, it was nice, wasn't it, that we sent some families from here to the Good Shepherd, but it's all kind of fizzled out. I just think in 5 years' time, I think it still needs to be part of the language and the context and the communication and the relationships and the preaching and the heart of everything that's going on at Emmanuel and St Barnabas and the Good Shepherd, and maybe also more churches across this area, because we are looking at how we partner with a wider group of churches. I would love, if I'm not here in 5 years' time but popped back to visit, I would love to hear people still talking about, we've done another new thing, or we're planning on doing another new thing, because we still really want to share the good news of Jesus with all of the people in Loughborough, in all of the different areas and pockets of where people live and where people work, and all of these different things. I think it would be just so exciting to come back and hear that it's still there, and it's still growing, and it's still a key part of the identity of what it means to be church here in this place.
Michael?
Well, as picking up what Kat just said, we planted St Mary's in Charnwood over 125 years ago from here, and then we planted the Good Shepherd over 80 years ago from here, and then we planted St Barnabas from here 5 years ago. So there was a 75-year or so gap between one church plant and another.
Yeah. So where will you be in 75 years?
So I would hope that as Kat said, it's still part of the narrative, it's still part of the story, it's still what we're determined to do, and maybe that there'll be obviously further developments in Loughborough. I think what I the revitalisation thing is great, the planting is great, but my bigger heart, I think, is for new communities in new communities. So you're providing something at the heart of a community. So I think that, so I would hope that the new communities that will be being built around Loughborough, and obviously further south from here, will have a worshipping, vibrant church community within them. And I would hope that either we have planted or we have helped others to plant into those areas. So I would hope that in 10 years, 5 years' time, 10 years' time, whatever it might be, that there'll be at least another 2 or 3 churches that we have either planted from here or have been planted as part of the learning that we have and the experience that we have from other churches. So yeah, that's what I would hope. And so it's more of it's not a thing of the time. it just becomes part of who we are,
Yeah.
part of our story. This is what we do.
Yeah.
And it's
Absolutely
and it's churches being bold enough and outward focused enough,
Yeah.
outward look enough to do that and say, actually, well, I can't speak for other churches, but they might say, oh, we can't do this because of this reason, we can't plant because of that reason. And it's almost like saying, well, what can you do? And how can you do this? Because it's in the new communities where the gospel needs to go.
Yeah.
I think, and because that's where, because the news communities need a centre, a heart, where people can gather, not just to worship, but hopefully primarily to worship as well.
I agree with both of you on those things, and I think for an SDB, I hope that we're trying our best to live out the first part of our vision statements, but I really would love to see the second, and to plant again, to do it again, to be part of that. That's really important that they, as a church, get it into their DNA that we are also part of. We're set apart as a community anyway for God, and we're distinctly different in this community, shining the light for Christ, calling people to Christ, as well as planting new communities. And as for those that live in Loughborough and know Loughborough, there's lots of new development down the A6. There's lots of opportunities. And I guess my hope is that in 5 years' time, that, as you've said, in the DNA of each of our churches, there is this sort of, we'll be the first to say, well, what's possible?
Yeah.
Could we plant?
Yeah.
We'll be the first to get in those conversations because it's part of our heart. Because every church was once a church plant.
Yeah.
And a response to the Great Commission as those disciples went out, we're also called to go out and share the good news of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Michael Cat, it's been a real privilege to share those stories, and I hope for those watching it, it's been really useful to hear that story and to encourage them and inspire them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Done.